Hello. Have you ever felt like your energy is being entirely sucked out of you by someone else? We often say this is an energy vampire, but if we look at it from the point of view of human design, there's probably something else going on. Let me explain. So, I have talked already in previous videos about the different electromagnetic dynamics, I suppose is a good word, around human design. So one of the things that I talked about was the fact that if you have a hanging gate but someone else has the full channel, then this is like a dominating kind of energy. So I have had a little wake-up call around this. I'm going to tell you a bit of a story. So this involves me and my father. Now, my father and I have had a very interesting relationship for a number of years. Not an easy relationship, quite a difficult relationship. I didn't ever really understand why. I knew, he had defined most of the centers that I don't have defined, but I hadn't really delved into it too much. There was probably a little bit of blame and that kind of thing going on. Let's be honest here. Sometimes blaming him, sometimes feeling like it was my fault. But when I had this particular experience that I'm going to talk about, and I went back and looked at our charts in a different way, it gave me an entirely new perspective on this as part of my growth with who I actually am. So let me tell you what happened. So first of all, I had a limb of my big gum tree fall down on the fence, and I just needed some help from my father. This is over and above the stuff I was getting from the insurance company. So I left him a message. He then rang me. We had about an hour's talk on the phone. Now, my father is getting old. He's not great at remembering things, so phone calls and conversations can be a bit tricky. Anyway, I got off the phone call just over an hour later and I was entirely exhausted. So yes, I am a projector and a non-motorized projector. So lacking in energy is part of my life, but this was something different. It was entirely just like every drop of energy had been drained out of me and left me dry. No exaggeration on that. That's literally what it felt like. I had to literally go and lie down and focus on nothing for about 3 hours. The next day, he turned up at my place to, support me and so on. And that was good. That was fine. He stayed for maybe 2 hours, something like that. And at the end of that time, once again, I felt so drained. I once again needed to go and, lie down. This time, having had some experience, I was a little bit more prepared. I kind of had a bit of a process this time thinking about it, which I should have done on the Sunday night. Anyway, doesn't matter. So after that, though, I'm going, well, what is going on? I know, that he's got the will/ego/heart center defined and I do not. And I have often struggled with themes around that I feel is part of that whole story. But at the moment, I've been looking at Uranus being in gate 40 in the will, I'll just call it the will center for convenience, in the will center, and really exploring my relationship with that dynamic of Uranus, which can be a bit tricky. So went back, had a bit of a look, and realized that where I had hanging gates, one of which was gate 40 where Uranus sits, my father had the entire channel, so the 4037. In the sacral, I have got gate 59 defined, and in my Mercury, so around communication, and my father has the 59.6 channel. Now, notice these are also emotional channels. These are emotional wave channels. So there's this connection that I have, even though I have an undefined solar plexus, to how I need to work with emotions. So this kind of brought up this whole issue around how I felt emotionally. I realized that when I spend time with my father alone, I am often triggered by questions around my value, my worth, and having to prove myself. I also struggle with people pleasing, particularly trying to please my father, which feels like it ain't ever happening, but that's a whole nother story. So, there's definitely some things that came into my awareness around this whole situation. So what can you learn from my lessons might be the next question. Basically, if you have someone that you spend a lot of time with and you feel entirely drained by them, check out and compare your two charts if you can. All right. If not, think about what kind of draining it is. So this is, for me, if I really thought about it, it was about feeling drained emotionally. It was about feeling depleted from, myself. The self felt like it was just flat. And it also felt like there was no energy to do anything. So these are all connected to, the sacral, the will, and the solar plexus. So you can probably suss it out, but it is really interesting if you can actually find it, particularly if they are in a really important part of your life, like a parent, a sibling, a partner, a child. Delve into it. It's a useful thing to do. And think about what conditioning has happened because of that dominating energy from the other person. All right, I don't have any dominating energy over my father from our natal charts, which explains to me why, and I'll talk about this a little bit in a moment, why my interactive human design chart actually allows me to dominate him a bit, because I had to bring the balance back. But that only functions really when it's more than just me and him, when it is interacting with society, essentially. All right, so investigate. That's my number one thing for you to do. Number two, take the blame out of the situation. Once I realized what was going on, I'm going, hey, it's not his fault. It's not my fault. It's just the energetics, and it's up to me, for my sake, to figure out how to work with that. Dad probably has to do the same thing. There'd be some impact on him as well. But by taking the blame away, taking the charge away from it, it gives you the space then to come back into yourself and go, hey, how can I benefit from this situation? How can I learn from this situation? How can I grow from this situation? So that leads me to the next tip I've got for you, which is to actually create your own process. If these people are part of your life, you can't avoid them. So you need to come up with a way to work within your own energy to release what's happening. Okay, so get really familiar with ways that work for you. For me, it was like lying down. It was a little bit of some ritual kind of stuff that I did. Next one, I talked a little bit about my interactive chart, which is an extra layer, or layers, because there's more than one. So this is something that's called the multi-dimensional aspect of human design, which was part of the, original download that Ra had around human design, but he didn't fully understand what it was all about. And he took the information to a woman whose name I've forgotten, sorry, who then explored it a little bit further. And then there've been other people who've, tried to explore and make sense of what this part of the revelation was about, made difficult by the fact that basically, the actual notes from the revelation are pretty much gone. So we're just kind of relying on, whatever's lying around. But anyway, so Kim Gould, who's a good person to get onto with this stuff, calls this our interactive layer. Essentially what it is looking at the position of your sun gates to start with, it because we move the sun. So we're moving the sun 88 degrees forward from the time of our birth and seeing where that puts things. This is like your soul going, this person has these characteristics from, the natal chart, the design and personality side, that are about their purpose here on earth. But, how can we actually give them some support when they're out interacting with people to help them make it through? So it's quite intriguing. Now, if you want to go deeper in that, I do have a human design reading where we can explore some of that if that's what you're interested in. Otherwise, you can check out Kim Gould's site called Taraka, or you can actually go into Genetic Matrix. They call it different things, and they've got a whole lot in there that are all related on this revelation. The most interesting one in terms of how you deal with situations, and perhaps in my case, why did I feel like I was a generator or a manifesting generator? It has to do with these extra layers being added on top. So they're not replacing, they're not stronger than. So your standard human design chart tells the story of you and your soul's purpose, but there are these other aspects that can add extra information. All right, so my final tip is to somehow see what's happening in some of your other layers that might support you in dealing with it. So I made the comment that when my father and I are with other people, the impact is a lot less because the energy is diffused. I get connections from other family members or friends or whatever, and it doesn't feel as intense. It's just when it's on a one-on-one, and that's just me in my natal chart, him in his natal chart, what's happening. All right, play around with it. It can be fun, but of course, make sure you've got all of the basics of human design sorted first, is what I would advise as well. Okay, I will catch you next time.